talking about the Aztecs, the Mayas, and the Toltecs. And I'm going to tell you about a little bit about them. They lived from 500 AD to 1500 AD. And so I'm going to tell you about the Aztecs first. The Aztecs lived in southern Mexico, and they had a lot of wars with their neighbors. And they also had a calendar that we still have today in a museum. And also, they did very gruesome things. They cut out their victims' hearts and sacrificed them to their gods. So, we don't want to be like the Aztecs. And their warriors looked like this. And they had and this is a priest's knife that they used to cut out their victims' hearts. And they made several structures like the pyramids in Egypt. They were like this, and they had different towers to represent different gods. And this blue one right here, is a temple of Tlaloc. It's a rain god. And this red one is the temple of Huitzilopochtli, the god of sun and war. This one looks like it's the biggest because it has the god of sun and war, which they thought if they didn't, I'm pretty sure this one is this one because they thought if they didn't have hearts, human sacrifices to their gods to the sun god, then the sun wouldn't rise. And when they're done killing them, they hang their heads on skull racks. And they had a big skugels. Oh, actually, this is the temple of the sun, which that's where they did their sacrifices. And they had no roofs in the school, so if it rained, then they would get all wet. And this is the king's palace. And that is a lot about the Aztecs. Now we'll talk about the Maya and the Toltecs. So the Maya also had structures like that. And instead of the priests offering the sacrifices, the kings did it. They did the same human sacrifices. They lived around the same time. So they lived both in southern Mexico. So the Aztecs lived over here, and the Maya and the Toltecs lived more southern. And they had a lot of ceremonies for their gods. The Mayas, they had ceremonies for their gods, and the nobles, they dance and sing, and their temples are really detailed. And their prisoners of war are going to be sacrificed to their gods. And they have several different temples. And now we're going to learn about the Toltecs. The Toltecs, they had a game that you had pads on your knees and your forearms and your hips. And you had to hit the ball with one of those places into a net or make the other team drop the ball. And at the end of the game, if you lost, you would be sacrificed. And this is a bull which may have held human hearts. And this is a carving of a Toltec warrior. In the Toltecs, they have a calendar that has 365 days, similar to our calendar. And it had a lot of paintings and carvings on it. And so they also, around 1160 AD, the tribes from the north were invading the Maya, and the Toltecs were scattered. And the Maya moved to new cities such as Mayapan. By 1500, however, the Mayan kingdoms had shrunk to just a few small towns. And how the Aztec Empire got defeated is the Spanish came in and defeated them. But the Spanish had horses and guns, so they had an advantage. Also, they had an advantage because the tribes neighboring the Aztec Empire, they had the sacrifice, and so they wanted to get rid of them. And so they helped the Spanish get rid of the Aztecs. And that's all I have to say.